Hello, hello. This is day 4 of Eat with Sandhya, and thank you so much for joining me again today. Just adjusting. I'm sorry, I often have client sessions that finish just a minute or two before, so it's sometimes a little bit of a rush for me to come, but no matter how rushed you are physically, like I say, we can close that tab and come fully present to our food, to our meal, to our enjoyment, to our body, and to our present moment. So there is no excuse for how busy somebody is in order to be able to eat well. So yesterday we were talking a little bit about both the macros around food and micronutrients, what were food composition we talked about a little bit. We had a little bit of a pop quiz as well, and one of the items in the pop quiz I deliberately saved for today because it actually does feature in my lunch for today. Okay, now for those of us that find particular foods boring, keep in mind that I always say that rather than trying to create specialty meals for yourself, go with tastes somewhat that are familiar to you, somewhat that feel tasty, but try and make them healthier if you can, as healthy as you can, sorry. But taste is not the only metric. We'll be talking a lot more about that next week. What I would like to start off by showing you is my lunch today. Please tell me if this looks pretty or not. My lunch, that is. So here we go. By the way, many of the things that we can do to make our food a lot more exciting, if excitement is important to you, is presentation, is association with memories. So a very strong memory association for me is this lovely plate which belongs to my grandmother and was bought in England or somewhere in the 1940s. So my grandmother saved up her gorgeous stuff till her very last years, and when she gave it to me, she said, please don't do what I did and go ahead and enjoy everything that I'm giving you. So I really took that to heart, and I have used, every time I bring out these plates, it reminds me of her. It reminds me of how much I enjoyed as a child laying out a nice meal and eating. So all of these associations that are positive, I'm recalling them and I'm using them to savor my meal today. And my meal itself is not too bad looking, and it's despite being plant-based, if that's the belief. So why I particularly, today I did ask Manju Didi for this particular meal for a couple of reasons. Very often if we order a meal of noodles or pasta, a very carb-based meal, we'll find that there's a lot of carbs, which aren't the demon in themselves, but if you remember rule number 1 about how to structure your plate, you'll find very little, that there'll be a disproportionately large percentage of carbs, way more than the 25% that's recommended, right? And what happens to the proteins? What happens to 45% vegetables? Now, keep in mind that a lot of vegetables do have protein in them as well. This meal is not very precisely composed, but let's take a look at how we've made this a lot better, right? Again, a lot more volume for volume. There are a lot more vegetables into these rice noodles or glass noodles, vermicelli, literally, that's what we've used here. A lot of vegetables. Unfortunately, some of it got a little overcooked with the lid on. We should have probably kept the lid off. I do have tofu in here. I don't seem to have served myself a lot, but there's just regular tofu in it. The more tofu you add, the more protein you're getting in that. We've got some peanuts on top, which are protein and high fat as well. And despite that, because my composition was not going to add up, I'm going to use rule of thumb, and we added a lot more vegetables on the side, and it's topped with a little bit of sesame. And I'm going to put a mustard, salt, pepper, lime dressing on it. So that is my meal for today. Wow, I'm actually able to talk without my mouth drooling, despite this being one of my favorite meals ever. What I wanted to say is, let's look at how this would typically be served to us in a restaurant, right? You'd have the pasta with maybe a little bit of vegetables on it. You'd have your protein in it, like typically your chicken, or usually pasta comes, with the chicken, but in other places several other meats. You'll have pepperoni on a pizza, and you'll have maybe you can have spaghetti and meatballs. So vegetables aren't like the starring agent of pasta. So it's hard to get that mix right. The way you can make it work for you. By all means, have your non-vegetarian protein if that's your choice. But do add the extra vegetables in one way or the other. If you're not a huge salad fan, another easy way to do it is to actually ask for a side of grilled or steamed vegetables, and just throw that into your pasta, and you've got a far more balanced meal. You might also be able to eat a lot less of the pasta itself. And again, remember that the cheese is going to add a lot more calories. Also, it's processed, it's concentrated food, usually high salt food. If you love your cheese, don't eliminate it, just reduce it. Very often, when I was eating dairy, or even once in a while when I don't want to make a big fuss, I'll take like the whole peel of cheese out, put it on the side, and my friends sometimes happily eat that. And I'll literally just put a few specks on top. Again, like I said, to give you that hit of flavor. For the dopamine hit to come, you don't need a lot. But eventually your palate starts getting reoriented, resensitized, and just the flavors of fresh food, beautifully flavored. Healthy food doesn't have to be flavorless at all. In fact, once the palate becomes more discerning, you'll start to get subtler and subtler flavors. Guess what? Umami has tomatoes and mushroom have umami flavor in them, if that's what you so seek. There are a lot of vegetables that are very sweet naturally. Carrots, sweet potato, they will give you that sugar hit as well. Sweet corn. So you can play with flavors and textures. The sauce for this glass noodle, I literally, again, just Googled glass noodle, whatever, 5 minutes this morning. We made such an easy sauce with a little bit of peanut butter, chili, garlic, little bit of light soy sauce. The recipe called for maple syrup. I don't keep maple syrup at home, so we put half a teaspoon of palm sugar, of ground brown sugar. Brown sugar, palm sugar, remember, is again just sugar, so very little of that. And some chili sauce, some chili which we'd sort of ground at home, and I did use a little bit of store-bought chili sauce as well in the interest of time. But again, because that quantity was so tiny, it still keeps things in balance, right? When you buy like the bottled Szechuan sauce and you put dollops of it, it becomes, just remember that in the balance of things, it's a lot more that you're going to have to work off or to be able to digest easily. Now, of the healthy foods, and this food has been getting a lot of attention of late. If you see, a lot of influencers are talking about the magic of peanut butter. I do have a bottle here with me, and I've had this for close to a year. That should tell you how natural the food is. But again, what are your thoughts about peanut butter? And is it really this miracle food that influencers are touting it to be? Any thoughts from anybody? Let's look at the ingredients on this. In fact, I think I've picked good peanut butter because, for starters, this is unsweetened. And literally, when I look at the ingredients, it's simply just dry roasted peanuts. Okay, when you dry roast peanuts and you start to blitz them, eventually they will emulsify. The fats in the peanuts will emulsify, and you will get a buttery texture. But the problem is that it's a nut, which is concentrated calories. It's got good protein, it's got good fat, but it's so concentrated, right? And we'll eat like 2 tablespoons of peanut butter, put a tablespoon in your smoothie in the morning, in the evening. Again, rule number 1 for how you balance out your budget was calorie deficit or calorie surplus. Very easy to go into a calorie surplus if you're eating such a concentrated, dehydrated food. Plus, that whole creamy baby food kind of texture will just make you swallow it without really actually giving your brain the biofeedback that you're actually consuming a vast quantity of calories, right? If you had to eat a corresponding amount of vegetables, that would probably be a bowl full, that 2 tablespoons of peanut butter would equal. So you're not going to feel full immediately for sure, and you'll end up eating a lot more along with those 2 tablespoons of peanut butter, not even realizing it, tipping you over. So rule number 1 it's harder to maintain rule number 1, which is the calorie balance. Rule number 2 that we talked about, the macros, right? The problem with a lot of these specialty foods is that it's very hard to balance out our macros in that, right? Proteins, carbs, healthy fats, and then you want like the rainbow of micronutrients, which we don't really understand a lot about yet. So today's topic relates to that also, which is nutrient timing. If peanut butter is one much talked about phenomenon, another even bigger sort of phenomenon that's talked about today is intermittent fasting, right? There are different rules to it. It seems to be so scientific. And is this for you? Is this going to make you healthier? In terms of what is conclusively evidence-based, intermittent fasting works no better or worse than a calorie deficit diet. Okay, so you could eat 1 meal, 2 meals, 5 meals, 10 meals, but if you stay calorie deficit and you're trying to lose weight, that will work the best. Okay, now, when should you try intermittent fasting? I'll give you a few situations and see how they work for you. If you're eating a lot of processed foods and rather unhealthy foods and not able to balance out your plate 3 meals a day, then I'll say to you, why don't you just restrict the number of hours for which you're eating what is essentially unhealthy food and eat just 2 of those unhealthy meals rather than 3 of them, right? So if you set a window for yourself, like an 8 or a 10-hour window, and say, I'm not going to eat any more crap outside of these boundaries, you'll actually end up being calorie deficit. It may not be the most nutritious diet, but your diet wasn't very nutritious to start with. So you're still picking the better of the 2 options. Similarly, if you have habits of like late night snacking or junk and cravings in the middle of the night or like at 5 p.m. in the evening, if you put boundaries in your brain saying that, hey, listen, I'm not going to eat other than in these hours, you're much less likely to go and grab. A craving is usually very, very momentary. It's very passing. 80 to 90% of our cravings pass in the first 10 to 15 minutes. We'll talk about how to deal with our cravings next week. So when you have that automatic rule set for yourself, you're a lot less likely to reach for something that's really poor nutritionally, that's not going to do very much for you. Now, the problems that I have with intermittent fasting, and then I'll also refer to some longer term studies, is that it's very difficult to get a wide variety. It's very difficult to eat the rainbow in a very short window. I've had so many people discuss their eating plans with me, and in all of these, unless you're able to eat a very large and a very diverse meal, like today, I do have a lot of different vegetables, but the quantities are so tiny, right? Is this going to fit my nutritionally balanced diet of at least minimum of 5 servings of fruit and vegetable in a day? Not hardly likely, right? 2, is this, if I were to just eat this one meal, is this going to make me hungry? 100% yes. Okay. Is this going to help me join my family, socialize with friends? Probably not. And the studies that I was referring to are that what they found with people that went into a sort of fasting diet was the kind of impact that it had on their brains, their moods, and their association with food. It's that you are not allowed to eat food during these hours or these days, as many of our habits and religious and beliefs are. And what tends to happen is that the minute that time gets done, it's like you're out of jail and you can go gangbusters now, right? So it doesn't help to create a very healthy relationship with food. Deprivation, and then because we have that deprivation, we feel like now I deserve something good, now I deserve a treat. Can you see how that creates those extremes of yo-yoing in our brain? So these are my 2 bits on intermittent fasting. Please use it or not, depending on how it fits in. Broadly speaking, again, the argument that, oh my God, this was how our ancestors ate, and if you had to go make a kill, you'd only eat once a day, stuff like that. Yes, but your ancestors weren't also sitting on their butts at a desk for 8 to 10 hours in a day, and then binge watching Netflix at night, and then also going out and drinking 3-4 beers, and so that argument is a bit of a fallacy. Rule of thumb, if you want to follow and try and eat with your circadian rhythm, yes, it might be a great idea to wake up with the sunrise and sort of start to slow. Our metabolism does slow down with sunset, so eat a little bit intuitively to that. Is there any miracle around eating breakfast? No. If you're not very hungry, you don't need to have like a proper breakfast. Again, use rules 1 and 2, which is your calorie balance and your macronutrients. As long as you're getting them in somewhere during the day, the nutrient timing is a distant third. We kind of, for most people, not having a breakfast at all can sometimes lead to more unhealthy food choices during the day. It could create a bit of a metabolic drop, your energy drop, your concentration drop. But again, much of this is around habit. So I hope that demystifies some of the questions around nutrient timing and also relates to our moods. It's the first part of our emotional eating that we're talking about. We're going to delve a lot deeper into that. Tomorrow is Friday, so we're going to talk about cheat days, rest days, weekends, cravings, temptations, and how to recover from them. So I hope to meet you again tomorrow. I have a meal waiting for me here. I don't think I can resist it anymore. Enjoy your lunch. See you at 1:35 p.m. India Standard Time tomorrow. Thank you to everybody that joined me today. Bye-bye.